What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. Before we get into today's episode, please hit that and subscribe button and consider sharing this with another coach that you think would enjoy this, as we aim to grow our reach to be able to impact the lives of more strength coaches who can therefore better interact with their sport coaches, better interact with their athletes, and make the entire field of strength and conditioning better. Today I'm joined by Coach Cesar Castillo from the Washington Commanders, and we talk about life in the NFL and life in Major League Baseball, as he has worked in both. Cesar and I go way back. We actually have a connection with Joe and a connection at Harvard, as we both had interned at Harvard. You're going to love this episode, especially if you're considering working in professional sport. Here at Strength Coach Network, we pride ourselves on giving you the best quality information from strength and conditioning coaches and practitioners that still work with or have worked with athletes. This is not theory. We are always about giving you practical information that you can apply day one, the minute you're done listening to this. And you can check us out for a $1 trial in the link down below. Click that link and find out more about us. When I was doing a little bit of research on you, I didn't know that we had so many connections together. Not only just the Joe stuff, but like Concordia, Harvard, and then obviously Joe. Like this is super cool.
Yeah, I remember Fraser talk about you back at Harvard.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's nice.
he would talk about you and a couple others that kind of went through that program and then kind of where they're at. So, yeah.
Bro, if it wasn't for, I've had Frazier on the show before. Frazier's presented Inside Strength Coach Network. Like, I'm not me without that experience at Harvard.
Yeah, dude. Especially like, was that like for you, was that one of your first internships?
Yeah, and I went to URI before that because I wanted to get ready for college. So
Gotcha.
I went to URI with Mike Siriano, who I don't know what he's doing now. He's been like in and out of strength and conditioning for years. But he was the head guy at URI, and I played football with him for 2 years. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go intern for him part-time while I was still working in the private setting so I could get ready for there. And so I wanted to do really good for Harvard, so I went there before.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I feel like that's a really good spot to start your career in terms of like all the things you get to do. Like it's a pretty hands-on experience. I feel like just because of the volume of athletes, and there's what, like 5 strength coaches full time.
Bro, the fact that there's that many athletes and like the school is so stubborn to not, they're like, it's the same thing I was talking with Joe about yesterday. He's like, talk about budget cuts. I was like, what is Johns Hopkins? How is the word budget cut in Johns Hopkins? How is that ever, except for like, oh, Johns Hopkins shouldn't have budget cuts. There should never be in the same sentence.
Right. Yeah. Same with Harvard, because there was just that one weight room and 42 teams. Do you remember that?
Well, in the academic things that I talk about it in the textbook that I'm writing for Cognella. But the fact that like 10:30 to 2, well, at least when I was there's class. And like, athletes are not about to be missing class to go take a lift. So that means in the morning or in the afternoon, it is absolutely slammed. So that's why, like, if you're listening to this and you're an aspiring strength coach and you're trying to figure it out, if you go to Harvard, you're going to get your hands dirty and you're going to get to coach, because we talked about Frazier before, but Frazier, Mullen, any of the other coaches that are there, they might have like three teams in at once, and they're overseeing them all because they're on racks 1 through 9. And interns are in there getting their hands dirty, getting to coach, getting to interact with athletes, giving them cues. Like, that's why it's so pretty.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't be the coach I am today without that being my first stop, for sure.
How did you get to Harvard from Miami? Playing down there and all that. Like, how did that work out?
Yeah, so I kind of I have family in Boston, so that helped in terms of expenses. And I had a buddy who was an intern, currently an intern with Harvard when I was a senior in college, and so I kind of reached out to him, and he sort of like recommended it, put a good word in, and then I applied, and fortunately for me, like that was right after graduation, so I just jumped right into it. And yeah, no, it was a great experience. I was there for I think 2 semesters,
Oh, you did a 2 semester as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those 2 semester internships, that was awesome because I got to actually program for a team. Like I had to get it, signed off by Curtis and by Frage, but being able to actually do it, and that again is something that if as an intern, if you're listening to this and you're actively interning somewhere and you're in your second semester and you've proven that you can do the tedious tasks because you have to do it, but if you're not getting the harder tasks, like you got to start looking to go somewhere else because you got to learn to grow your wings and do the thing.
Yeah, 100%. I echo that too.
The thing that we've talked about on you and I had a phone conversation before, and one of the biggest things I wanted to have you on the show here for is having the licensed massage therapist and the ART, because a lot of strength coaches, myself included, like I have RPR. People will get things of that nature, but the legality that turns into if you're actually allowed to put your hands on somebody. And I had Douglas Heel on the show, who was the creator of RPR, and he's not the creator of RPR. He created Be Activated. Be Activated was out before RPR, and then the Cal Deets back and forth. Anybody can have their opinion. Listen to that episode if you want to go on the back and forth. Anyways, Douglas was talking about, like, legally in the States, somebody could give, consent. Oh yeah, sure, you can, RPR me or stretch me or whatever. But if you don't have the licensing behind it, getting that, you could still get in some hot water. So I rambled for a little bit, but I'd love to hear you talk about the LMT and how this could potentially help out strength coaches. Because I know you kind of said that you think that that can carve out a niche for strength coaches.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, at least for me, it kind of comes back to, okay, why do we do what we do? And for me, it's to serve and provide athletes with, everything I can possibly give them. And so for me, I kind of saw a a need, I guess, because of the demand for that athletes demonstrated when it came to wanting soft tissue work done, and as strength coaches, like, we just kind of, will stretch them out, or guide them through like foam rolling and all that. And so I just wanted to be able to better serve these athletes, and so the LMT route was another way for me to do so and provide more value to the athlete and to the organization. And so for me, like, the way I look at it was, as a strength coach, you have your toolbox, right? And you have all your tools in the toolbox. For me, like, doing the whole LMT thing is just, picking up another toolbox with its own tools in it. And so within that LMT toolbox, I'm able to, either do your traditional Effleurage plus massage, or ART, or manipulate fascia, just depending on the context and the situation. So I feel like that was a huge step in my career, just because it opened up so many opportunities for myself, and most importantly, it allowed me to better serve and, provide training, soft tissue, all in one for the athlete. And it's one of the best decisions I ever made. And I think both things are just so complementary, the training and the soft tissue work. And so for me, you know, I definitely encourage, people to, like, look into it, because I feel like there's definitely a demand. Um, and for me, it's just, at the end of the day, it's also an extra set of hands in the training room, you know.
Mhm.
So
Anybody listening to that and they're like, okay, I want to do it. What's the path? How difficult is it to go about it? What would you recommend to everybody?
it's definitely a commitment and a sacrifice, for sure. For me, I went through the community college route. There's community
Nice.
colleges, there's private institutions that offer um, massage therapy school. But for me, it was just more economical to go through the community college route. And so depending on the program, there's there's programs that it's just like a college, like your college spring or summer semester. So for me, I took advantage of the NFL off season and went ahead and did it in 2 semesters, spring, summer. And it was a big sacrifice because it's you're working all day, you're on the floor all day, and then at 5 p.m. you got to go.
Vacations are meant for you to be outside doing things that you love and reconnecting with your family and your friends and recharging your battery. It is not meant for you to travel and listen to some coach talk in a conference hall and eat some food that you know really isn't the best thing that you want to be eating. Take back your vacations and do so with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. When you purchase an annual membership, you're going to get access to our course, Performance Coaching 101. In the subsequent years, it'll renew and you'll get access to 102 and 103. Each year, you're going to get access to 2 NSCA CEUs and 10 CSCCa CEUs. These CEUs will allow you to be able to learn from the comfort of your office. You'll be able to earn CEUs on your time rather than having to travel. Take back your vacation and be able to do this with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. Click the link down below for more information.
A massage school at night till like 9 p.m. at night, and
Mm.
so
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a commitment for sure. And it's a sacrifice because you're taking time away from being with loved ones and all that. So it's definitely not easy, but I feel like it's definitely worth it because typically most programs are only like 9 months long. So you just kind of like just got to grind it out for 9 months, and then you'll sit for the test, take the state national exam, and apply for licensure, and then from there you're good, from a legal standpoint.
Now, does that cover you in all states? Like, because I remember with athletic trainers, if we hired an AT from, they were working in New York and we got hired them in Maryland, it took a little bit for them to actually get everything approved. Is that the same process with you?
Yeah. So basically, when I when I apply for a new state license, yeah, it depends on the state, but as far as Virginia goes, I had to sort of just transfer my license over, and the process wasn't too
Gotcha.
bad. I just had to submit some paperwork and pay some fees, but it's definitely it's definitely doable. Um, so it just kind of just depends on the state.
And hearing you talk about like this selfishly is something that I'm really interested in because I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is actually something similar to you was going the affordable economic route. And so strength coaches listening to this, you might be able to find your school that'll pay for this because they give you tuition reimbursement or they'll pay for you to go somewhere. Like he gets, I think he said he either has 6 or 9 credit hours or like $6,000 to $9,000 that they'll give him to go to school. So like you could go and get this paid for through your school and go about it at a certain pace. Like go look into it because now you can almost create that niche. And anybody that's not watching, I did the air quotes because it was you were the sports science guy on the strength staff. Now there's strength and conditioning and sports science, staffs. You could become the LMT, the massage person that can help out, like you said, and be that bridge if you're going to be the high performance coordinator, if you're going to be the return to play specialist and you have the experience with hands on. It's just that natural bridge from the athletic training room to the strength and conditioning room because you do both and you live in both worlds really well and you're a translator. You can speak both languages and it just seems really, really like a good move. Even like I said, something that I'm considering doing like in my time or maybe not this year, but next year.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I think to your point, being able to speak the same language and bounce back and forth between both rooms, I feel like that's very important as well in terms of just being on the same page in terms of communication and streamlining and just being on the same page about things. It's definitely been really helpful because oftentimes I have my table set up in the weight room turf area, but sometimes I'll work out of the training room
Yeah.
too. So it's cool to kind of bounce back and forth between the two, and and it's definitely been valuable for me.
Well, something that strength coaches we talk about a lot is the fact that we spend time with athletes and that causes them to trust us. But it's also that right there is an opportunity to spend more time and build that relationship with somebody, like especially if you're working on a sore muscle spot, if you're working on something where they're recovering from an injury. This can really help you develop that rapport with somebody if you're spending an extra 10, 15 minutes with them every other day, every day during some process. Like that's relationship building.
Yeah, it's definitely a great platform for those relationships with the athletes because it's sort of like an intimate setting where you just like one on one,
Yep.
and it's their body, so they're trusting you already, and so it's great to see like players like just even just open up about anything. You're just they just kind of want to be taken care of and tell you their problems and all that, and you're almost like their
Yep.
therapist too. But it's a really cool, unique way to get to know your athletes as well and build that rapport and yeah, for me it's been one of the biggest tools in terms of like building relationships with the athletes as well. You really get to know them not just as athletes and players, but you know you get to know about their interests, their families, their kids, and I personally love that.
Yeah, same. And I remember when I first got into the industry, somebody said, if you ever want to find out if somebody committed murder, talk to their hairdresser or to their personal trainer because that's who, people open up to and they trust. So it's like you're digging that hole deeper of trust with athlete and strength coach when you can kind of, add something like this to your toolbox.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
For you, and whether you'll, say it or not, but the fact that you've been in professional sport, like what has that process been like for you? And do you see any trend, any reason as to you're like, this is kind of why that my career has gone this route, in your opinion?
In terms of like just professional sports in general, or
Yeah, why professional? Because a lot of some strength coaches that we've had on there, they've only been in high school. Some of them have bounced around. I've bounced around, but for you, it's been a pretty linear path. Yeah, it was baseball with the Twins, but then it was NFL, Dolphins, Bears, now the Commanders.
Mhm.
Like you've had this, you've been in professional sports, you've seen things that way, and that gives you an extreme different perspective than most coaches because you see differences in the professional level, but it's been only at that professional level. So, one, how were you able to get into it? Because some of our listeners are like, Caesar, tell me, because I want to get into pro sports. Like that's what really matters to me.
Mhm.
But then also, how did you like? How do you think you were able to get into all of that? Looking back on it. TeamBuildr has been my trusted source for online software programs for my athletes since 2019. Since then, they've continued to grow. They have this new practice integration where practice planning can integrate with the sport coach. You have your sports science, your AMS, the questionnaires. They've continued to evolve and keep giving you the things that you need. It has made my life easier as a strength coach. I want the same for you. You do not need to keep printing on lift cards. Please, printing on lift cards in Excel, you don't need to do that. If you need help being able to purchase it, they have a pre-written grant on their website. They're also part owners in the Plyomat with Coach Rich Burnett. So if you need to get a good device that can accurately and validly and quickly get your jump height and ground contact time, so now you can get RSI. Plyomat's a great choice. We utilize that at Goldfinch. Check TeamBuildr. Check them out in the link down below. Please stop printing on lift cards. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your athlete's life easier. It's easier to program on the back end. Check out TeamBuildr in the link down below.
Yeah, so going back to my time at Harvard, I was fortunate enough to basically get a full-time job when I was 23 years old by the Minnesota Twins, and a big part of that too was they were basically seeking bilingual strength coaches to bridge that gap between the Latin American population and the kind of integrating them into the American strength and conditioning kind of culture. And so like I was super fortunate that I got that opportunity at such a young age. And then from there, it's I was able to sort of have a certain level of ownership in terms of, being able to program at an early stage in my career and being able to, basically I was a head strength coach for a minor league team at like 23 years old. Still trying to,
Jeez.
still trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing, but it was very invaluable because that's how I learned, just through failure and mistakes. And so, and from there, I I always kind of had my eye on the NFL, just because football is my background. And so, again, like, I didn't really have much of much of a connection to the NFL, so I literally just like guessed email addresses. Like, I kind of knew what the domain was, so it was like, first name dot last name at dolphins.com. And so I just kind of like sent out my resume, cover letter to a couple different teams. And mind you, I don't even know if these emails are even going through. And so one day I just got a call, and it was Dave Paloka from the Dolphins, and he had known who Fraze was and had called Fraze from Harvard.
Dasher has completely changed the game for how I'm able to time my athletes, whether I'm doing ACL, max velo, or curvilinear running. Had the blues, had the blacks at Goldfinch. Now that I have the silvers, this has saved me so much time in setup, breakdown, if I'm going from Ankeny to Huxley, or from Ankeny to the Nevada location, or Nevada to Huxley, like wherever I got to go time athletes, it has made my ability to go from one place to another so much easier with the silvers. Strength coaches that have to go from one field to the other, or from the field to the court, this will help you save time. Now, in the spirit of saving time, you also have the ability to have an API interaction with TeamBuildr, so now you can see all the data on the back end. Seeing data on the back end, Dasher has a free app, a player profile app, that will allow athletes to see their data. Over 6,000 coaches and athletes have done so. And if you want more than just the timing gates, if you check them out in the link down below, they have solutions to help you out with vertical jump, broad jump, RSI, all that. Check them out in the link down below.
And then, from there, I got my first opportunity in the league. So
Wow.
that's another piece of advice, for younger strength coaches is, sometimes you just have to like carve out an opportunity for yourself, because you know you just got to make something out of nothing sometimes. And so that's kind of how I transitioned over from the professional baseball setting to the professional football setting. And and from there, I've just, at the Dolphins, that's where I, carved out the LMT niche, and just kind of learned from those around me, and eventually been blessed enough to be here with the Commanders. But yeah, in terms of the the professional setting, I just always felt like that was more suited towards like my personality, I feel like. Um, just because I feel like I do better with like the one-on-one versus, like, I'm not like a big like rah-rah guy. Um, so if I wasn't doing the strength and conditioning, I would be a teacher. So I just like to teach and educate. And so I feel like the professional setting provides a really good platform for that, just because athletes are always curious and about their bodies, and it's almost sort of like a partnership. And you're in lockstep with the players, and it's not much of like a, barking orders at athletes or being the punishment coach or anything like that. I feel like it's a little bit more um intimate, I guess, with the guys. And so that's, for me personally, that's, that obviously that's just me, but that's, I think, why I've kind of gravitated towards the professional setting. It's just about the relationships you develop with the players. At the end of the day, I feel like for me, it's been my favorite part. Not the NFL or MLB logo, none of those things. It's more so just the guys and what I'm able to, provide them and serve them with.
Yeah, and if I hear what you're saying, essentially, you're not having to, work and coach effort because these people and these players understand, what's at stake. And from the different stories that I've heard or from what I've watched when I was visiting Moses, like they know that if they don't perform, they're going to be gone. So they're already highly motivated. They already care. And now you just get to pour into them, which is why I really love what you said that it's a partnership because you're coming alongside them and say, hey, you're trying to keep playing in the NFL. Guess what? I want you to keep playing in the NFL. Let me do these things to help you keep playing in the NFL so that way you can keep doing what you're doing and provide for your family and catch touchdown passes or break up touchdown passes or tackle people, whatever you do.
Yeah, 100%. And I use this analogy with the guys all the time. I'm basically like I tell them like y'all are the Ferraris. I'm just the little old mechanic. I'm just when you're on the table, I'm just fine tuning. You guys are already elite. You guys are extreme competitors, and so all I can do is just make sure you got everything you need in terms of like your physical mobility, flexibility, all those things, so they can do what they need to do on the field. So
Shout out to you for actually saying that. And because I feel like not all strength coaches think that. I know I've worked for strength coaches that don't feel and act that way. So credit to you for that. And I mean, another strength coach has been that way. I talked about Scott Cochran earlier today, but Scott Cochran was very famous for being like, you're a Bentley. I'm just putting spinners on you. And the more that we go back to it, it's like, all right, it's 2025 right now. And back in 2009, 2010, when he was saying that, it's more and more accurate because if you're a good football player and we get you a little bit stronger and get you out of your own way because you're not stiff and rigid with your muscles, you're going to be an even better football player. Like, but if you're bad at football in the strength in the the recruiting team or if in college, wherever you come in from, however it works nowadays, but if you're bringing in bad football players and you're expecting the strength staff to make them good football players, it's like if they suck at catching footballs and throwing footballs, we can make them bigger, stronger, faster, and probably suck a little bit less, but they're not going to be the best.
hmm yeah, 100%. It's almost like the toothpaste analogy, right? Like your college guys got a lot of toothpaste in the tube, but for these some of these NFL guys, it's just you're trying to squeeze whatever you can, whatever adaptations you can out of them. But I think a big piece is the the stuff on for me at least with the stuff on the table. I feel like it's been really valuable in terms of taking care of their soft tissue and making sure they're pliable and being able to handle the demands of the sport.
Question that I think a lot of our listeners are asking themselves right now is, and I'm not asking you in any way, shape, or form to talk about personal relationships or people that you're working with. What I'm saying is, at a high level, detached perspective, they might be thinking like, okay, he talked about, coming alongside and partnering, but what about all these guys like in the NFL? Don't they all just have their own guy and they don't want to train with like, is it is it hard to try to get that buy-in because they are at the top of the level and so many other people around will want to get and be with them? And if you're a highly specialized, LMT that people might want to go outside of the facility and work with, has that been something that you've ever had to encounter?
So yeah, I mean, guys definitely at certain times of the year they have their guy in the off season that they go train with. And we try to do a good job of communicating with their trainers and just being in lockstep with them too. Because at the end of the day, it's about the athlete. It's not about like my program or their program. It's about the best interest of the player. And athletes are really smart, so they can pick up on those things. They know when you have their best interest at heart, and so that way that's how they trust you, and then that's how they sort of they'll do their stuff with their outside guy and during the off season, but once it comes into the in season period, then they have you have the trust with them that they'll do what you think is in their best interest. And what's great about the NFL calendar is that in season period is stretches
Mm-hmm.
out pretty wide. So it's basically from July to February. So it's a good it's a good window of time to really help these guys with whatever they need. And sometimes, like, I always encourage guys to, like, hey, if there's somebody out there and you can, and you want to train with them, like, great, like, as long as there's a communication there and there's a relationship, then by all means, because it's not, I feel like it's not about us, it's about the player.
Getting back to being about the players, we had a strength coach who worked in professional baseball, and RJ was talking about one of his best ways to get buy-in during either an RTP or similar, like you said, trying to bridge the gap between with some of the Dominican players was he found that they really loved Pokemon. Hawkin Dynamics is my preferred choice for force plates and for handheld dynamometers. Made in the USA up in Maine, I have been using them since 2020 when I was at Towson University. Still use them at Goldfinch today, and I brought the plates to the high school that I've trained at. We will use the plates and transport them when we train athletes at the many different high schools that we currently work at. As I said, they are a handheld dynamometer as well with the True Strength. You can assess athlete internal, external rotation, hip, AB, adduction, calf strength, hip, whatever you want to assess, you can do with the True Strength. It also has the ability to pair with the difference striking machine. So now you can see single strike, multiple strike. Check out Hawkin Dynamics down in the link down below. And so he would come up with like different, it could be within the wellness questionnaire. He would then always try to sneak in like, okay, 3 different labels, 3 different images of a Pokemon, and then like 6 names where they would have to try to figure out who it was. And he would do these little games. And so on his episode, he kind of talked about ways of, communication building and going about it that way. Do you have any little tips or tricks of things that you've done to really help, speed that process up and connect with athletes?
I don't, I feel like I don't have any, like, specific, like, tricks or anything like that. I just feel like I just really try to be intentional about listening to them. And I feel like players really appreciate when you remember something very minuscule that they said. For example, like, I ran into, like, a former player of mine, and I asked him, like, how, his daughter was doing, and I, said her name, and he was like, "What? Like, you remember that?" Like, I feel like they really appreciate when you just remember things that they care about. But first you have to be intentional about listening to them. And I feel like for me, that's the best way to build buy-in, is by, like, literally just listening. And you know the old, like, you got 2 ears, one mouth for a reason. So I feel like that's been valuable for me in terms of just creating buy-in. And it could be something as, like, oh, I like this rapper, and then next time they come in the weight room, I'm blasting his music. It could be just little things like that. I feel like go a long way. But but yeah, I think listening is, at least for me, like, my go-to, like, tool, I guess.
Within listening, what have you been listening to and seen in the field of strength and conditioning over the last 5 years, right? Post COVID, like what are some of the good and the bad that you've been seeing in the field, so that way we can start to push this thing in the correct direction to, best serve athletes at the end of the day.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, it's just leaving our ego at the door. I feel like that's always helpful, because I feel like sometimes we can, butt heads with, whether it's other departments or amongst each other. And I feel like at the end of the day, that doesn't do any good to the athletes. It's a disservice to them if there's some kind of, issue about who's right. Because I feel like ultimately it's what's right. and
Mm.
and I feel like the more we can just just communicate and kind of like put that athlete at the center, I feel like the more we can, as a profession, we can continue to grow. Those are just, my thoughts, but I always feel like it always comes back to the player at the end of the day, and we just have to do best by them, and sometimes that means, just getting along, and even if you don't agree with someone, you don't. There's a certain way to be, collaborative and still be a great team player as a strength coach.
Who have been some of the people that have shaped you and shown you how to do that, the best way?
Ooh, it's been a good number of people. Honestly, this has been a community of like people around me, and I always try to seek out different mentors. So I can't name everyone, but I think one of the biggest influences on my career has been, the guy that gave my first shot in the NFL, Dave Paloka. He was very instrumental and sort of just like you know, the you know, the psychology of strength and conditioning and relationships, and not so much just all the X's and O's, and my boss now, Chad Englehart. I definitely I definitely look up to him as a not only as a leader, but he's like one of the most like street smarts individuals I've ever encountered in the field. He's just so good with, relationships and listening and all these things that aren't really strength and conditioning. You'd be surprised, that's for me at least, that's who I feel like I've gravitated towards the most is just the soft skills and how to navigate and how to talk to coaches and all these little things that just fall outside the umbrella of S&C, but at the same time, I feel like it's so influential in terms of building relationships with other departments, getting buy-in from coaches, being in lockstep with the athletic training room, like all these other things, that other than like the squat benching, the deadlift, all that stuff. I feel like there's just more than that, and I feel like I've had really good mentors that yeah, like it's great, keep learning about all these hard skills, and because all that stuff is great, but at the same time, don't forget to dive into more of the soft skills, um, because at the end of the day, it's really about how you make the player feel, and that's the shit they'll remember.
And one of the things that we have to do is, work with sport coaches. What have been some of your best techniques or things that you've seen, whether it is from Dave or from your current boss now? Like, what have been some of the best ways that you've seen relationships built with sport coaches? Because athletes play for the sport coach. So if the strength coach is dogging on sport coaches, that's not helping anything out. And we all know that happens far too often in strength and conditioning. So, what's your piece of advice on that?
I think one of the easiest things is just watching practice itself. Just obviously we all have different responsibilities during practice, but the more we can be around the game itself, I think the more we can understand like its different demands, whether it's biomotor or biodynamics. We can kind of see how these guys move within their position and what unique demands they each have, and then after observing, you can cultivate some questions, and now you can approach one of the position coaches from a place of curiosity. Hey, like I see so and so. What do you think so and so needs to do in terms of you know in terms of what you feel like you need to improve on? And oftentimes, like the sport coaches they'll give you their definition of it, and it might be different than what the literature, the science says, but it's all the same shit. They're just saying different things, but I feel like that's one of the best ways is just to like come up with questions and come from a place of curiosity when it comes to for the sport coaches versus just saying, oh, like, why is, the so and so should be doing this, or, whatever. It's just, I always feel like it's just better when it's organic and you're trying to understand the game.
Powerlift has been my choice for strength and conditioning equipment ever since I got into the field. Right now, I still have their racks, I have their barbells, I have their bumpers, specialty bars, and we have the IMTP device at Goldfinch, and it's been great for us because it's allowed us to free up the rack where we used to have to do the IMTPs. Now we use that IMTP device, roll it around. We've created more space. You have to check them out. Doesn't matter if in your college, high school, pro, tactical, or private, they have the ability to make whatever customizations and whatever adjustments you need. I was a part of the weight room that was the 32 brand new rack facility at Iowa football. You see what they did for TCU football. Doesn't matter how big, how small, whatever your customizations are, Powerlift is number one in the exercise equipment space for a reason. Check them out in the link down below.
Because at the end of the day, like, sport coaches love ball, so if you just approach it from that lens and from that angle, then I feel like you can reap some rewards.
Yeah, and it's clearly apparent that your ego like is not in play at all. And as somebody that you've said, you were 23 and you got kind of thrown into it, like so you're a young cat. What has been your key to having so low of an ego during your career? Because more strength coaches, in my opinion, can really benefit from hearing that and learning it.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, it hasn't always been like that. I mean, obviously, you're young and you think you know it all, and so it's definitely a journey. Um, but I feel like we first have to be aware. For me, like, I was a 23-year-old strength coach. I thought, I knew way more than I really did, and so you get humbled throughout the journey. But I feel like as long as you can self-reflect and just have some kind of like awareness as to, I feel okay, like, maybe my ego got in the way here, maybe I could have done a better job of handling that situation or whatnot. And then from there, like, I feel like once you kind of develop a sense of like, okay, I want to get better in this area, then I just kind of like seeked out um different resources. For me, I'm a lifelong learner, so I love reading books, and so some of these, like, even, Ego as Enemy is, for me, was one of those first books. And, you know, that really gave me a good idea of, like, just being more aware of, like, okay, this is when my ego comes into play. Um, One of the lines in the book that always sticks out to me from that one is, Ryan Holiday, the author, talks about, your ego is like all the hair in the barbershop after a haircut, but after each you got to keep sweeping that, what I'm saying, keep sweeping all that, it's always going to come back. There's always going to be hairs, whatever, on the floor. You just got to, it's always going to come. You always just got to catch yourself, I guess. And then I'm a big proponent of, like, therapy. So for me, that's been really influential in terms of just regulating my emotions, and just kind of being more in tune with other people, and being able to um almost just have a better feel for how other people are feeling. And I feel like for me that's been really influential in my career, because it, like I said, it all comes back to the player. Like, at the end of the day, if I'm like a hothead and I can't control my emotions and I have this huge ego, how is that of any help to the player? I'm doing him a disservice. So it just ultimately, it depends. It goes back to, like, what's your why, and it sounds cliche, but I mean, if you're really in it to make a difference and make a positive impact, then sometimes you just have to, like, check yourself. You know.
No, I do. Where do you see strength conditioning then going? If everybody can get on that path, where are we going in the next 5 years? Because technology has exploded since COVID. Like, where are we going in this next 5 years to get us to 2030?
Um, that's a big question. I think, yeah. I mean, obviously, with new technology, there's there's always like the next best, shiny toy, and this is, it could be like, okay, this is the best thing, or and I feel like we have to just kind of look at things from a 10,000 foot view, and just look at not think of things in absolutes, and just look at things as tools that can help. There's no there's no, okay, this is this is gospel, like we have to, use this piece of technology or whatnot. I feel like they're all tools, but I think it goes back to us being, you know collaborative and communicative. Okay, like let's look into this new piece of technology together. There's no silos, because you may have silos and not talk about things openly and together. Then yeah, you can run into, like, okay, like, we're using this piece of tech, and we may not all be in the loop of it, and sometimes there's less buy-in that way. But I feel like the more we can include everyone, whether that's the whole health and performance department or even just your strength staff, and I feel like it definitely goes a long way in introducing all these new pieces of technology, because obviously it feels like it's already like blowing up, but it's about to, probably these next 5 years, probably going to be even more of that. So I just feel like it just comes back to like the human element of it. You can't lose sight of it.
Yeah, especially when you have, sports like yours where the in season is like an off season in terms of how long it is and how you can actually get to load athletes. Like
Mm-hmm.
for you all, it's the longest, most interrupted training that you have, and same with basketball. Like if your athletes are gone during the off season, you don't really have that same full traditional off season that, some coaches that work in college or in high school, depending on the structure that they have. Like, so the better you can train them during it by utilizing whatever technology you're using, it just, again, allows you to get back to that service piece that we've kind of hit on so many times.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're just tools, and some of these tools are just, you know, at the end of the day, they're just there to self audit us as coaches.
Vitruve has been my choice for VBT for years now, not only because of the encoder and how well it works with the app, and you can film movements with the camera and get live variable feedback in real time if you so choose to on the app, but the fact of the amount of content they have been pushing out to help coaches better understand VBT. It's not only just to move the bar faster. You can be working on what's the appropriate load for high rep sets based off velocity loss. You can be looking at velocity loss threshold between sets, in between reps. VBT is not just moving the bar fast. It's moving the bar fast with heavy weights. It's not just moving lightweight fast. And Vitruve has been at the forefront educating coaches on VBT and how to do it the right way. Check them out in the link down below.
And that's kind of how I look at it. And because obviously we all have our intuitions and our coach's eyes, and I feel like some of this technology is just sort of just validating things and self auditing kind of our what we've already kind of been doing. It's just nice to have other resources and tools to either tell us if we're going in the right direction or in the wrong direction. But I feel like at the end of the day, is they're just tools, and we just need to figure out which ones are most appropriate for our athletes.
Well, you understand it, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of strength coaches that I've talked to that just blindly get certain technologies and don't understand how to utilize them. And then there's some other strength coaches that just bury their head in the sand and don't do either. And it's, only Sith Lords deal in extremes. It's finding that middle ground and being able to understand what it does to help you do the thing that you need to do. And again, never forgetting that human element. Like
Yeah.
that's something that we really drove home at Iowa and that I brought with me to Towson was we don't work with barbells or dumbbells. And so now you can say we don't work with, force plates and GPS units. We work with human beings, and to never forget that. And behind that athlete is a man or a woman that is potentially a husband or a wife and that has kids and like has a story. And to
Mm-hmm.
never forget that, because when you can start to peel that back, that's where you start to communicate with them better. You get your buy-in, you get your trust, and that's how you can make magic happen.
Yeah, 100%. And just like you said, like if you if you build a strong relationship with the athlete and you create buy-in and they trust you, you know, it makes it much easier to introduce a new piece of tech, and they'd probably be more inclined to trying it out versus just the opposite, you know, like, oh, look at this new shiny toy. They're probably like, all right, like, you know, like,
Cool.
you know what I'm saying? So like, it's the more we can put the human first, and then I feel like the tech will follow, you know. And I don't know. For me, that's just kind of my approach or my thoughts.
Well, what would be your kind of last message that you want to leave with strength coaches on this? Because you're talking to strength coaches all across the country, all across the world, college, high school, pro, tactical, private setting. What would be your kind of resounding message to everybody to, however you want to leave it with everybody?
I guess I would just echo touching on, okay, like, why are we coaching? You know, what's our intention? You know, as far as why we picked this profession, and I feel like it's an incredible platform to not only like make gains and help, athletic performance, but I feel like it's also an invaluable platform in terms of like positively influencing lives, you know, because we do spend so much time with these guys more than like position coaches and even trainers. We're always around these athletes, so I feel like the more we can tap into, okay, how can I listen to them better? How can I better serve them? Whether that's going and going the sports science route and doing some of that stuff, or maybe being a RD, or if you're interested in the massage and the body work, then maybe going the LMT route. It all depends in which ways do you think you can best serve these athletes and be able to make the most positive impact. Um, I feel like that's super valuable in terms of just being being something bigger than yourself. Being a part of something bigger than yourself.
Amen to that. I appreciate you spending some time with us because there's a lot of other things you could be doing over the last hour.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you, bro. Big fan of the podcast, and I, you know, I'm very appreciative of you having me, and yeah, we'll have to keep in touch.
Sounds good, man. You have a great rest of the day, and you got a fan in the Commanders over here with me.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Hmm. Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.